Welcome to Oasis, where stories soothe your mind and whisper you into restful sleep. On the misty morning of August the 3rd, 1492, the port of Palos in Spain lay shrouded in a thin veil of fog. The salty sea breeze swept over the docks, where the masts of 3 carracks, the Santa María, the Pinta, and the Niña, stood faintly visible in the haze. Their sails had yet to be raised, the canvas drooping like the lifeless wings of a dying seabird. Standing on the stern castle of the Santa María, Christopher Columbus pressed his left hand against the leather case of his brass astrolabe, while his right hand clenched a yellowed parchment map. His knuckles were white with tension. This map bore witness to a decade of fruitless persuasion among European royal courts. The Portuguese had mocked it as the drunken scribbles of a madman. Yet now, a royal decree from Queen Isabella of Spain, sealed with red wax, lay within his logbook, its golden crest glinting in the morning light. "Juan, sound the depth," he called to the deck below. Juan de la Cosa, his assistant, promptly cast the lead line into the sea, its tallow-coated base bringing up greyish-white sand. 20 fathoms, about 36 meters, I to Captain. The seabed is rising. Juan's voice carried excitement. Columbus nodded. This was precisely the sign he had expected. According to Ptolemy's geography, a gradually shallowing seabed in a westward voyage indicated the approach of a continental shelf. He turned toward the dock, where Martin Pinzon was directing sailors to load the last barrels of salted cod onto the Pinta. The experienced captain suddenly looked up, and their gazes locked in mid-air. Pinzon raised 3 fingers, a secret signal confirming they would set sail within 3 days. On the dock, 70 sailors hauled sacks of rock-hard biscuits and leather waterskins encrusted with salt crystals. Pedro, the ship's carpenter, was caught by the first mate as he secretly diluted the wine with seawater. "Trying to kill us with thirst," the mate growled, grabbing him by the collar. "Better than drinking rotten bile," Pedro spat. The freshwater barrels had been sealed for half a month, their surfaces now coated in green mold. Columbus descended the gangplank, and Pedro instinctively recoiled, expecting a harsh reprimand. But none came. "Give me the wineskin," Columbus said, his voice eerily calm. Under the watchful eyes of the crew, he raised the diluted wine to his lips and drank it in one gulp, his throat bobbing as if swallowing a blade. "Now, who still questions my judgment?" The sea wind lifted his crimson cloak, revealing a dagger inlaid with emeralds at his waist. By September 2nd, the trade winds at latitude 28 degrees north carried the fleet westward like the breath of God. The deck of the Santa María cracked under the blazing sun, releasing the scent of pine resin. Rodrigo, the lookout, lay atop the yardarm, his eyes bloodshot. He had seen nothing but the horizon for 3 consecutive days. Below, the cook distributed lunch. Weevil-infested hardtack, which had to be swallowed with vinegar to avoid cutting one's gums. Boatswain Diego's teeth had begun to loosen, a sign of scurvy. Latitude 27 degrees 36 minutes, longitude. Longitude unmeasurable, Juan wrote with trembling hands in the logbook. In the 15th century, longitude was determined using lunar distances, but persistent cloud cover had rendered the astrolabe useless. Columbus stared at the compass needle trembling in its oil-filled case, then suddenly grabbed a quill and drew an arc on his map. We are following the Tropic of Cancer westward. Marco Polo wrote that Japan's golden coast lies beyond. His fingernails dug into the parchment as if trying to extract the spices and silks of his imagination. From the corner of the deck, a scoffing remark carried over. It was the sailors aboard the Pinta, placing bets. 10 copper coins says that by next month we'll be eating pickled herring in Lisbon. Late that night, Columbus curled up in his cabin, calculating the voyage. Candlelight cast his giant flickering shadow on the wall. He flipped through the travels of Marco Polo, a brittle cinnamon leaf tucked between its yellowed pages, the only memento he had carried from the slums of Genoa. The Great Khan's palace is paved with gold, he muttered, then suddenly flung the book at the wall. The iron candlestick toppled over just as the door swung open. Juan stood in the doorway, holding a whale oil lamp frozen in place. "Get out!" Columbus roared. The flickering light caught the bloodshot redness in his eyes. He looked like a caged beast. By October 6th, the sea was eerily calm. The sails of the Santa María hung limply, and the hull swayed with a swell, emitting a sickly groan. Below deck, the sailors played dice, their sweat and the stench of excrement fermenting in the stagnant air. "Day 33, Pedro muttered, stabbing his dagger into the wooden table. "By maritime law, the captain has no right to force us to our deaths." The dice stopped rolling. 6 pairs of eyes turned to the first mate. On deck, Columbus was measuring the sun's altitude with his brass quadrant. Its engraved edge bore a verse from Dante. "Through a sea of suffering to the shore of joy." He sensed a presence behind him. 6 sailors had encircled him in a semicircle, Pedro's dagger pressing against his lower back. "Turn the ship around or you'll be shark bait," the first mate growled, his voice like a rusty hinge. Columbus turned slowly, the dagger's tip piercing his linen shirt, a drop of blood beading like a ruby in the sunlight. "Kill me, and you'll never find your way home." He pointed to the Virgin Mary inset in his compass box. "Do you know why the needle always points north? Because God has prepared the promised land for us beyond the horizon." A sudden horn blast from the Pinta broke the tense silence. 3 short and 1 long, the signal for land sighting. Everyone rushed to the railing, but only a dark smudge lay on the horizon. "It's just a storm cloud," someone groaned. Columbus seized the moment. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, give me 3 more days." He tore open his shirt, baring his chest. "If we see no land, you may cut out my heart with your own hands." At midnight, on October 11th, an inhuman scream rang out from the Pinta's lookout. Martin Pinzon held up a torch to the sea. Floating on the waves was a branch with fresh green buds. The fleet erupted in chaos, as if struck by lightning. Columbus dashed to the stern castle, his wind-blown grey hair streaming like a banner. As the eastern horizon turned pale, he caught the scent. Earth's rich decay, laced with unfamiliar floral fragrances. When dawn pierced the clouds, the silhouette of San Salvador Island emerged in the golden light. Columbus collapsed to his knees, his fingernails digging into the resin-filled planks. He heard the cries of seabirds, the rhythmic lapping of waves against coral, and the thunderous pounding of his own heart. As the gangplank thudded onto the white sand, he stumbled, not from seasickness, but from the sheer solidity of the land beneath him. Juan unfurled the Spanish royal banner, and Columbus noticed footprints in the sand, barefoot imprints with separated toes, unmistakably not European boots. In the name of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. His proclamation was drowned out by his crew's sobs. Pedro knelt under a palm tree, devouring wild fruit as his juice dripped onto his chainmail. Rodrigo buried his crucifix in the sand, tracing cross after cross. Only Columbus saw the amber eyes watching from the forest. The Taino people, gripping their Stone Age spears, ready for the arrival of these strangers. At dusk, he wrote in his log, "Today, we arrived at the Indies, though I suspect the latitude is mistaken. The natives call this island Guanahani. Tomorrow, I shall present gold and spices as proof. Glory be to God." As he penned the final words, a drop of ink bled into the parchment, like an eternal mist over the sea.